Welcome to Independent Thought and Freedom, Episode 5. My guest today is former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Basdeo Panday, as we continue our conversation about his life, which is entwined with the most important global issues of the 20th and 21st century: colonialism, decolonisation, socialism versus capitalism and the Cold War, the rise and fall of trade unionism, race relations, poverty and development, black power, African-Indian relations, the nature of political power itself. He overcame the disadvantages of his poor village background, faced his personal fears, and took strong stands on these major issues for his whole life, ready to pay the price when necessary. His personal story is important for the world. In episodes 2 and 3, we spoke about his background in the poor agricultural village of St. Julian in Trinidad, his going to London to become a lawyer, and his subsequent acting career in major films and television in the 1950s and 1960s, and how he gave up his Commonwealth Scholarship in Law to dive into politics for the first time in a radical new party that was challenging the neo-colonial status quo that was emerging in Trinidad and Tobago, just 3 years after independence from Britain. We rejoin the interview when Panday takes the stage in a small village meeting in Trinidad with the world-renowned intellectual and writer, C.L.R. James. So here you are on this lorry stage with C.L.R. James. Is C.L.R. James speaking?
Yeah, yes, C.L.R.
Do you remember what James talked about?
Oh God, no, that'd been too long.
Well, James was an international figure, well known. I mean, he had his books, Beyond the Boundary, which was which is one of his masterpiece, as well as Black Jacobins. But I doubt the Princestown audience were enamored by that. Probably they probably didn't know much about that, did they? Or what was their sort of response to James?
I think the attitude would have been among these poor rural farming community and so on, that here was a bright man.
Right.
And whatever he was saying had to be good.
Exactly. Now, how about you? You yourself were not political.
I suppose. Sorry.
What was your view of James? Because you were not political at the time.
I admired him tremendously.
Why?
He had courage. He was a brilliant intellectual.
Did you read his books already?
No, I hadn't at that time. All I had read was law books and so on.
Yes.
Before that.
So what gave you the impression of his brilliant intellect? Were people talking about him in London or anything, or what?
I would not know, as I say, because I didn't belong to that crowd.
That's right.
But he was admired.
He was an amazing speaker. Amazing.
Oh gosh, yes. So
that's brilliant.
As a matter of fact, we contested the elections together in '66.
Oh.
so remember, when I stayed there, after that thing with Stephen and so on, the next year was the 1966 elections.
Right.
We got together, formed the Workers and Farmers Party.
Right, exactly, and this was again because it was felt that the two major parties were too racially based and not class based.
The whole object was, our idea was that here was a society that was divided basically Indians, Africans.
Yeah.
And the politics was generally racial.
Yeah.
With Simbunat Kapileu coming back as the Indian counter match to Eric Williams, doctor for doctor politics, if you remember those words and so on. So there are the Indians clinging around Kapileu and the Afro-Trinidadian clinging around Williams. And we thought that the line should be drawn this way.
Yeah.
Not horizontally, but perpendicularly, where the upper class was on top and we were below. We were there. And the idea was to unite the Indians and Africans of the working class. That was the object.
Now,
and as the name itself suggests, Workers and Farmers Party.
Right. Now, in London, as you said, you weren't political. So, I mean, did you consider yourself a socialist or anything at the time?
No, not at all.
No.
Not
But
at
in
all.
Trinidad, I think one of your first speeches was, "I'm happy to be called a communist." Isn't that correct?
That is because Dr. Williams and the PNM had spread this thing that we are communists.
Right.
Because we were fighting for the working class.
Yeah.
And we were using terms which belong to the working class verbiage, if I may use that.
That's right.
word.
Yes. Now,
So we were talking about let those who labor hold the reins and that sort of thing.
that's right. Well,
so
James
that-
was certainly a Marxist. I mean, he was unapologetic about it.
Yes.
But he was an
That's right.
independent Marxist. He was not a Soviet Union person at all.
I think he's more Trotskyite.
Yeah, at the time, and then he even broke
Yeah.
from them as well.
Yeah.
But now, so your first elections, you lost a
The
deposit.
first, I think we created a record in that the 36 of us lost our deposits.
so,
But the best joke about this was the country was divided so racially political, such racial division, that my father told me, son, I know you're going up for election, and I'll vote for you, but only because you're my son. You wanted to vote for the DLP,
but
and I came and spoiled his wish by putting up by joining a political party, which he didn't want at all. He wanted. So he voted for me because I was his son.
And that itself, was audacious. We're talking about audacity and courage throughout your career. Because, I mean, I think you would have known you weren't going to defeat the PNM and DLP. Did you go in actually thinking you would, or did you sort of know you weren't going to do it, but it was worth a try? You had to do this. What was it?
What we thought that if we united the Indians and Africans of the working class, we'd break the racial politics. The idea was to break the racial politics at the time. We had lots of success, actually. But after the elections, a lot of the people who had lost the elections and so on left the country, became disenchanted. Dr. Makandube, I remember, from Princess Sound, he had fought the elections as well, and he left the country. Max Eiffel.
Yes.
There is a joke about Max Eiffel that I must give you.
Okay.
Now, Max Eiffel was a brilliant man, really brilliant, very intelligent person.
An Afro-Trinidadian lawyer.
Yeah. But he probably was the worst orator you could think of. He speak in very jagged terms and so on. And we were having a meeting in Woodford Square. And CLR James, I used to call him the General.
Okay.
And I said, General, they put me in charge of organizing the speaking list.
Okay.
So I said, General, I'm organizing this speaking list. And so on.
Sorry, about how old would you have been? This was 1933, you were born, this is 65. So you
was
were
about
32 years.
32, 33.
Right, good.
Yeah. And I said, General, tell me, do you want to speak before Marx or after Marx? He says, young Basdeo, I will speak before Marx, after Marx, or during Marx. I'll never forget that.
By the way, did he have the accident at that time and was his shaking and all that? Do you remember? Because there was a time where CLR James had an accident and he was shaking. He couldn't write anymore.
Not as much.
Right.
He was really a quaint guy. I remember we were campaigning. You know, they used to build the shops long time with large doors and a little pavement like in front of the shop. So, and there we were in front of the shop. The door was closed, of course, and painted in green. And somebody threw a big rock at CLR.
Oh.
And yeah, of course. And it hit the shop door, and some of the green paint came off on the rock. And James would walk with this rock at every public meeting and show them the kind of violence in which the P&M was prepared to go, and so on and so forth.
Right. What did you face election violence?
Yes, I fought the Naparima seat, and I remember fighting the Naparima seat. I was on a platform. If you know Barakpo, where the police station is now, there's a junction there. And again, we used to speak at the shop front. They'd close the shop and the shop yard, so to speak, and we'd speak from there. But I had a meeting there. Capitalism had just, I think the week before, had a meeting, and their symbol was the torch.
Right.
And they would light flambeaus. And there'd be hundreds and thousands of flambeaus at this meeting and so on.
Which would be like just for the international listeners, that's like a bottle, a glass bottle with oil and a rag in it, and you light it.
Yeah. We put pitch oil, something called pitch oil, kerosene.
Yes.
In the bottle, take a rag, stuff it down on the bottle, and leave a little bit at the top, and light the top so that was the flambeau. And they'd have flambeau and so on. They had a meeting there before. The week before, and there this young greenhorn having this meeting and talking what? Economics. Talking.
No wonder you lost a deposit.
When I was finished, man from the audience, villager, came and pat me on the back. He said, "Chief, you make a good speech there, you know, but in the wrong party." He voted DLP. The thing that really hurt me with that election, I fought the Naparima seat and lost. I didn't mind losing.
Right.
But I got 326 votes, and Lionel Frank Sukaran got 327, and that hurt me. I got 326. He beat me by one vote.
And Lionel Frank Sukaran.
We both lost our deposit, obviously.
Right, and he was a major political figure in Trinidad, and his grandson is now Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago this day. Yes, I mean, so that was a major person. And you were a young person. You came on and you lost just by one vote.
He broke with the DLP. I think I'm not sure whether he broke with the DLP.
Yes.
And fought as an independent, I think, in that election.
Yes. So I mean, so the violence though that I was asking you about, did you experience any election violence?
I did not physical violence. I didn't experience any physical violence.
Because in Trinidad, but they were not characterized by political violence except the 61 elections.
Yeah, but sometimes the verbal violence was so intense, you'd have preferred to have a little slap on the back.
But so that's why the rock thing really is surprising to me, because that's not a usual thing in Trinidad politics. Even when it gets very heated, it doesn't reach that level in Trinidad. So that's
I don't think we experienced violence in that election.
Yeah.
But what happened? But as I say, the idea was to unite the Indians and Africans. I've always believed that the single most deleterious factor preventing us from becoming truly a nation is the racial division in the country, or the division in the country, which is basically ethnic, racist, and so on.
And the obverse of that is that a lot of people have called you a racist for raising issues of discrimination. You know, so there's this kind of it's sort of a weird a gulf of consciousness. So there are some people who believe that by raising these issues, you are raising racial tensions.
Sure.
And then you, on the other hand, are saying, well, you need to raise these issues.
If that was the case, then Mandela would be the biggest racist, wouldn't he?
Exactly.
But he was not.
That's right. And so, yeah, so you very much experienced that through
all right.
And
so
again,
that,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, so again, and you know, I want to know some of the personal things, because as you said, and this is very common in Trinidad and Tobago, so people when they lost the election, a lot of people migrated. And this happened in Trinidad. People migrate a lot when they decide that, listen, I don't have a future here, there's nothing here. So they go to America, they go to Canada, they go to England, and they leave. You didn't, but you had a scholarship you were in London already. You had a scholarship to go to India, but you did not decide to go. Why is that?
Well, first of all, having decided to join this struggle of C.L.R. James and Stephen and so on, I set up a law practice in San Fernando in this.
Because one more part, because even C.L.R. James left. Right?
Yes.
So anyway.
Even Capildeo left.
That's right. Capildeo left. C.L.R. James left. You're right. But you stayed. Mm-hmm.
So I set up practice. But strangely enough, the very thing we were fighting against became an asset for me. That is to say, the law set up the industrial court.
Right.
And said if you have a dispute, you go to the industrial court. So here was a court that dealt with both law and economics.
Yes.
And I had both law and economics.
Right.
So I became the lawyer for several trade unions.
Okay.
And always in the industrial court fighting for workers. Never appeared on a single case for the employer.
And the OWTU was one of the leaders?
I became the lawyer for Seamen and Joe Young's Transport and Industrial Workers Trade Union, Beddoes, Food and Allied, lots of small Indian unions. I became the lawyer for them, practicing in the industrial court.
And this is in the 60s, and after independence, the trade unions were agitating. Although they agitated for independence, and many of the workers voted for Eric Williams, they were dissatisfied in the early years of independence, and they became more and more radical. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I think that's right.
Because I mean, and so you were involved with the radical trade unions.
So I with the trade unions, but I can't explain it. But for some reason, I figured I should be more than their lawyer, and I began actually going into the trenches with them.
You edited the newspaper, right?
That came later. For which I was arrested, actually.
Yes, exactly. I want to get to that point. But yes, but you start to march and everything, you're saying.
But so what happened was that I would join them in their marches and their struggles and their strikes and all that sort of thing.
There was a bus in 1968. There was a bus strike because Eric Williams made strikes illegal. It was against the law for any union to strike. And then the unions organized this bus strike, and you were part of that, correct?
We decided, the government says they were going to break the strike. So we decided, there were a lot of us, Stephen Maraj and myself and George Weeks and Joe Young and the whole lot of us. We gathered on I think it was called Independence Square. It's still called Independence Square.
That's right. It was Marine Square at the time.
When the PTSD had his headquarters there. And we decided that we are going to block these buses.
Right. So that's a bus company, the national.
The bus, because they are going to break the strike. They're going to drive the buses out.
So they got scab labor to do that?
Well,
or whatever.
I wouldn't call them scab. Poor guys, their job depended upon it.
Sorry, I was using left-wing trade union language.
Yeah. So what happened is, here we are, stand up in front of the gate where the bus is supposed to come out. And as the buses come, we put our hands on the buses and we are trying to stop the buses with our hands.
Yes.
And the supervisor is saying, drive the bus, drive the effing bus, drive it, kill him. The poor driver wouldn't. He couldn't drive the bus and kill us.
Right.
By that time, the police had arrived with what they call the Black Maria. I don't know if you know what the Black Maria is, the police van.
Yes.
Right? And they began tossing us into the van, the police van. And I will never forget this one. They're tossing me and Weeks and a lot of us in the police van. But for some reason, they had a respect for Stephen.
Right.
But Stephen wouldn't have us go alone. Stephen came into the van, the policeman himself.
He walked in.
Walked into the police van. He wouldn't let us go alone. And of course, they arrested the whole lot of us. Threw us in the cell that was on police station was on St. Vincent Street, opposite the Red House. And they put us in a cell down there. And so.
You know, I remember when I was arrested in 2003, you came to the police station with me during the budget debate. But so this is a mirror.
Yeah. So that was the bus strike. So that is what happened. I wasn't merely the lawyer for the unions. Mm-hmm. Became the lawyer for we became the editor of the Vanguard for the Oilfield Workers Trade Union as well. But I got involved in their struggles.
And this is interesting because, again, it's a multiracial
yes.
working class struggle.
Yes.
And very often, the thing like the bus workers, mainly Afro-Trinidadians, I would say, or is that
yes, they were mixed.
Yeah, and then the oil workers, certainly the leaders, Joe Young was an Afro-Trinidadian, George Weeks was an Afro-Trinidadian.
Beddoe, Francis Beddoe.
Right, and as the radical trade union movement was becoming more radicalized, more socialist, there was also another strand that started to come in, which is the whole Black Power thing, because the whole civil rights movement was going on
and also the development of an ideological lunatic fringe,
right,
which has another story actually when I was leader of the opposition.
Yes, because I do want to get to that, Namoti and those people, but
that's right.
Yeah, but let's so first, because this is the 60s, and so in the United States, you had Malcolm X and you had Martin Luther King and all that was going on. And of course, particularly the Afro-Trinidadian population here would definitely be watching that with great interest.
Certainly. And there was the incident in Canada with the university.
That's right, the Sir George.
Sir George
Williams, was it?
I think so, Sir George.
Yes, in Montreal, the West Indian students who were supporting the whole Black Power, Black struggle. In fact, Black Power as a slogan was said by Stokely Carmichael, who was a Trinidadian who migrated to the States and led.
And was banned from returning.
Right. Eric Williams banned Stokely Carmichael from coming to Trinidad. And you as Prime Minister lifted that ban
that's right.
When was it? 1999, 98?
Somewhere above
like a 30-year ban. that was not lifted by anybody except yourself. And a lot of times in the local local politics, they point to you being a racist, a pro-Indian racist. But I think a lot of times in the local politics now, people don't understand the radical trade union background you come from.
I suppose those who did that believed that attack was the best method of defense.
Yes.
Who probably were themselves racist.
Yes.
But in order to defend themselves, they attack you for being a racist.
That's right. That's
anyway.
Right. And so you had, did you have any links with Stokely Carmichael at the time? Or
No.
Right.
So we had reached the point where the Workers' and Farmers' Party had lost the elections. The party had dissipated. I got involved in trade union activity, legal and trade union activity and so on.
Now, during the Black Power state of emergency and the army mutiny that happened here, what were you doing?
I remember I supported the movement, and I remember when Geddes Granger, as he was then, and
Dave Darbo,
right. No Kafra Kambon.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember when they too had the concept that it was a bad thing for Trinidad to be divided.
Yes.
And I will never forget the big banner, Indians and Africans unite.
Yes.
And with that banner, they decided that they would leave Port Spain and come down to San Fernando to join their, in quote, Indian brothers.
Did you join the march?
At Chaguanas.
Right.
I met them at Chaguanas.
Now, so you had been, how long were you in jail for?
When?
In 68 when you were for the bus strike, because I'm presuming that's the only time I know that you were in jail in that period. Were you jailed more than once? Or
we were jailed for Bloody Tuesday.
Yes, that's in 75.
That's in 75.
Yeah, but in the 60s, that was the first time you were jailed?
We were arrested.
Put in the police van?
I'm placed in the cell.
Right. But it was maybe just an overnight thing or something? Did they let you go?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't remember. They must have.
Yes.
One must look at the records to see what really happened.
Right. But anyway, so you continued your activism. You joined this National Black Power March. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, go.
I remember Bhadase Sagan Maraj, and had a lieutenant named Ram Pratap.
And Bhadase Sagan Maraj was a leader of the Hindus in the 1950s.
He was the leader of the Hindus and also of the trade union movement that represented the workers, the laborers.
Right, which were the poor Hindus who really formed the bulk of the sugar workers.
Yeah.
So was Bhadase still the leader of the union at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you remember during Black Power?
Yes, they came down there. And in Cuba, where the police station is, near to the police station, there was a train line. The train used to run on a line that crossed the road there. And I remember that very well. And next to the train line was this shop, owned by a Chinese gentleman, where he had his shop below and his living quarters.
We have a lot of Chinese Trinidadians that have been here for over a century.
Oh, yeah.
A century, yeah. Just to let the international audience know.
And he had his living quarters above the shop. And he had what we call a gallery. Which
yes.
It's a gallery. Well,
a kind of porch, yeah.
That kind of porch.
Yeah.
It was a wooden building, if I remember. And he allowed us to use the porch to speak.
Yes.
I remember that.
I know that was during the Black Power, right? Right.
Yes.
So that's interesting. So the point is that a Chinese shop owner allowed.
And Bhadase had told the sugar workers, don't let them in. They come to take your work, your job, and set up an antagonistic situation.
Because what is interesting there is that these young Black Power advocates were rebelling against Eric Williams, who was seen as the Afro-Trinidadian leader, and they were calling him neo-colonial, right? The neo-colonial regime, and that he was leading a neo-colonial government, and that it wasn't sufficiently independent.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. So I remember that Bhadase had said, don't let them come here, and so on and so forth. And the government was so wicked that they stopped the buses running at 10 o'clock. Now, you don't expect the Black Power movement and ourselves to have a meeting which ends at 10.
Yes.
After all, it has to go on to midnight, doesn't it? Anyway, they stopped the buses from running. So there are these Black Power supporters in Cuba, no cargo home.
So that means a lot of Afro-Trinidadians from the north of the country coming down to central,
Cuba,
south area.
and can't go back home.
Yeah, and mainly Indian area.
And I remember going up on that platform and calling upon them to open your doors. They can't go home. They will not sleep on the streets. Open your doors. To which there was a very good response.
Right.
There was a very good response to that. Yeah. So that was that incident.
So now during that time, you had decided to lead a union yourself. Is that correct?
Well, what happened? What happened was this: the industrial civilization had created what is called bargaining units, and the trade union would be recognized as the bargaining agent for a bargaining unit. And so the sugar workers were divided into the laborers and factories workers. In fact, it was called the Sugar Worker, All Trinidad Sugar Estates and Factories Workers Trade Union. That was the name.
A long name, that's right. Above them was the Sugar Industry Staff Association. Okay. And above them were the higher echelons of management. So there are 3 bargaining units. I became the guys in the ATAS, the sugar industry, that bargaining unit that was just above the workers. They asked me to be their lawyer. I said, right. Now I'm their lawyer and we're doing well. We are fighting, struggling, and so on and so forth. But the workers are below. The factory and workers, they were being betrayed by their union. They were being sold out by their union. There's a history of that. It's a pity the guys in the university have not written about this. But anyway, they were really being sold out. Like, for example, how are they being sold out?
There was one case, for example, they go to bargain for wages. Yeah. And there was one reported situation where Bhadase would flip a coin to determine what to do, how much to ask for.
Right.
The workers were also being brutalized because every time they stood up, the union was in the hands of the company. Yes. So that those workers, the workers in the fields and so on, they're asking me to represent them.
Was this while Bhadase was alive or after he died?
Yeah, no,
he was alive.
He was alive.
Okay.
And I said, but I can't represent you because you belong to a bargaining unit and only the bargaining unit can give me permission to represent you. I can't.
And I just want to point this out to the listeners, international listeners again. Bhadase, just as Williams was seen as a godlike figure, I mean, but Bhadase was I don't know if godlike is the right word, but he was certainly a formidable figure that
He certainly was.
That you didn't want to mess with at all, because he had a reputation for being rough as well.
Yes.
So again, this is pointing to your audacity, and you are constantly taking on the big icons in the society.
So what I did is, since I couldn't bargain and fight for them at the lower level, but I was the lawyer for the ATAS, the upper level.
Yes.
I told the guys, I said, listen, you know how we're going to help those fellas down there? We are going to change the rules of your union at us to recruit members of the lower staff. That is how we're going to get them into our union, and we don't be able to represent them. They become members of our union. And there was a guy by the name of Roy Rajaram, who was president of the ATAS union. And his house was literally firebombed.
And by whom? Do you know?
No, but I suspect.
Yes, not the government, probably.
No, not the government.
Yes, but
the leaders of the union we were trying to take over.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, that boy Roy Rajaram, they threw a Molotov cocktail at his house, and his child, there's a window, and there's what is called the window sill.
Right.
And his child was lying just below that window sill when they threw this Molotov cocktail at his house, at the window. Mm-hmm. And it is a lucky thing that it didn't come through, otherwise it would kill his child. Right. And he got scared to death. Yeah. And he left the country and went to Canada.
Right. Mm-hmm. So again, another sort of story, and you were not scared, and you stayed.
But what happened was, I remember when there was this 66 elections, we decided we'd boycott that election.
71, is it?
Is 71?
Yeah,
61 and 5. Oh,
yeah, no,
66 and 5, 71. You're quite right. 71, man. The 71 election, we'll boycott the 71 elections because we didn't want the voting machines and so on. We wanted the voting age to be reduced to 18. And we said we will not contest the election unless there's a reintroduction of the ballot box and the voting age is reduced to 18. Now, Bhadase decided that he is going to contest the Naparima seat.
Yes.
And I think he told the people that Eric Williams said that he'll rig the machines in order to get him in and so on. So he goes down to fight Naparima seat.
But Bhadase is one of these populist people who didn't necessarily have a high regard for ethics, let's say. But he was kind of this man of the people sort of thing.
At the time, I was living right here.
Okay.
In Brian's Gate.
Right, San Fernando.
And election day now, about 2 o'clock. A few cars pulled up in front of my door. And the fellas say, Chief, I say, yeah. They say it looked like Bhadase going to win. And we're going to vote for the PNM. We're going to vote for the PNM to ensure that he loses. They did. And he lost.
Mm-hmm. that's very interesting for students of Trinidadian politics who.
Whereas Bhadase, who are the union leader, the religious leader, the political leader, goes in the heart of the stronghold and loses.
Yes. Yeah.
It indicated the success of the working class struggle that we were carrying on. Although we lost elected, we were saying it's a no vote campaign. That's part of the struggle. And you are going to break the no vote campaign. Well, we'll vote against you. And so they voted against him. I remember him making a statement, which is rather funny. He said, they have rejected me religiously. They have rejected me politically. And they've rejected me unionly. He was leader of the union, you see.
Yes, exactly.
I remember that very well. And I think he may have died of heartbreak. He died soon after. He died soon afterwards.
That's right. I would think something like that myself. Yeah. It was Naipaul has said about Trinidad, that there's so many stories of Trinidad are stories of failure, personal failure, and
sure,
and it's tragedies and things like that.
So he died, and when he died, at the same time a mutiny had taken place.
Right, in the army, because just like how the bus workers didn't want to run you over, the army in Trinidad didn't want to attack the young protesters, and that's what the mutiny was. They didn't want to follow the orders to attack their own people.
That's right, and there was this mutiny.
Yes.
Now, as a result, now Bhadase is dead. He has left in charge Rampratap Singh, who was his
deputy, sort of second in command.
Yes, but that sounded too good. Anyway, who was equally a thug.
Okay.
Carried guns and so on, terrorized workers and so on and so forth. And terrorizing their own workers, they're terrorizing them not to fight against the company.
Right.
Because they had sold out.
They were getting a cut from the company or something.
Something, whatever they were getting.
Right.
Rampratap now.
And sorry, by the way, that was Booker's, so the sugar company that was based in London. Is that correct?
It was called the St. Madeleine Sugar Company, which was probably owned by Booker's, yes.
Yeah, so you still have the Tate and Lyle. That's it. It was Tate and Lyle. That's it. Right. Booker's was Guyana. Tate and Lyle was Trinidad.
That's right.
And so you still had the British companies operating in Trinidad, even though we were independent and all that, right? So it was sort of a hangover from the colonial days, right?
So that what happened is, Rafiq Shah, who had led the mutiny and had been imprisoned and so on, was in jail. He was a hero, a national hero among
the radicals, yeah. Williams hated him.
And he promised that I will win this mutiny and I will come out and I will lead you, sugar workers. I will lead you. Because that is the base, you see. The sugar workers constitute the base. And I would lead you and so on. And Rampratap realized that he couldn't hold this union against Rafiq Shah. So what he did is, he came to me. And he asked me, he says, will you accept the presidency of the All Trinidad Union? And I said, he said, because the union will dissipate and then fellows will come and take it over and so on. I said, I'll consider that on one condition, that I'm elected to the position.
Right.
And I also tell you that I will not lift a finger to help me be elected. I will not lift a finger.
And you didn't want it to be a rigged election, obviously. As some people.
But it was inevitable.
Exactly.
Because that's how they stayed in office.
That's right.
They stayed in office by rigging elections. So it was inevitable. I can't remember who contested the election. Some contested the election, I'm not sure. But I became President General of the All Trinidad Union after Bhadase died in 1972.
I think it was too. That's correct.
Or 1973, around there.
And I mean, and when you took over the Sugar Workers Union, it was you immediately, I think, started to bring together the other unions, oil, sugar, because Bhadase, in a sense, was keeping them apart. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. So now we started this movement of uniting the Indians and Africans of the working class.
And you had a nice saying about oil and sugar mixing.
Oh, that was a lovely one.
Yeah.
I remember the opposition saying, because I am leading the sugar workers, Weeks is leading the oil workers, and we are trying to unite.
So Indian, Trinidadian, Afro-Trinidadian.
The opposition said, oil and sugar cannot mix. Oil and sugar don't mix.
Yes.
And I replied by saying, quite to the contrary. When oil and sugar mix, it becomes sweet oil. And I mean, that is what led to the ULF.
That's right, because
you see,
and just before the ULF, you had, because Williams outlawed public demonstrations, if I'm not correct. And so you had the March for...
That's right.
Yeah, so explain that March for Bread, Justice, and Peace, was it?
Peace, Bread, and Justice.
Right.
So we were being very successful in uniting the races, uniting the working class across racial lines. We were very successful. And in fact, there was a meeting in Skinner's Park. For that purpose, again, we are having meetings all over the place, uniting people. And it was a tremendously successful meeting.
Now, let me ask you, there was a saying, there was a phrase you had coined and used to use, but I don't know if you had used it since back then. So you can tell me. You had a phrase called the parasitic oligarchy.
That was that was a little later.
Later, okay. So you didn't get onto that at that time.
Not yet.
Right.
We were very successful in uniting the workers of oil and sugar, and in that there was the Transport and Industrial Workers Union, and also the Food and Allied Union. The working class was actually coming together, and we had this meeting in Skinner's Park for the purpose of demonstrating our unity, and it was tremendously successful. And following upon that meeting, there was a convergence of struggles. I was struggling in the sugar industry, and I was asking for 100%, because the sugar workers get 63 cents an hour.
Yeah.
And
100% is $1.26.
Yes. That would have been $5 a day, and I was asking for 10. Right? I was fighting for the union. Weeks was fighting for his workers. Joe Young was fighting for his, and there was a convergence of struggles.
So against, and let me put this in context. So you are fighting Tate and Lyle, a big multinational.
No, by that time it was
Carney 75.
Carney 1975 Limited.
So the government had taken over. What about George Weeks? Was it Texaco?
Texaco.
Texaco. Was Shell still there, or they had gone?
I can't recall.
I think Shell may have gone. I think it was just, so Texaco was the multinational then.
But there, the employer was a common employer.
Right.
The government.
Mm-hmm.
So the government had already nationalized the sugar industry. So they're the employer of the sugar workers. They had nationalized oil. Oil was
Yeah.
Africans, and the bus workers and so on.
Yeah.
And there was a convergence of struggles. And we decided that since there was a common employer called the government,
Yeah.
we would lead a march from San Fernando to Port of Spain for peace, bread, and justice.
So it's kind of like the Black Power March the other way.
Yeah, we're going to, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was the 18th of March, 1975.
Yeah. And there's a very good book written on it by Owen Batiste called Crisis, an excellent book, where a young Basdeo Panday yourself with your longer flowing hair and your charismatic presence. One of the things that stood out to me when I read that book so many years ago, you talked about, because Bhadase had died and he was the leader of the Hindu religious organization, as well as political organization, as well as the trade union. And you talked about a new type of Hindu, a new type of, and you were talking about sort of like a new interpretation of Ram and leading the struggle. So instead of a kind of passive Indian, which sometimes the notion of Gandhi sort of promotes, a sort of weak Indian, you're talking about a struggling Ram weapon.
As a matter of fact, when I came into the industry, the sugar industry, and began trying to organize them to struggle and fight and so on, they had actually accepted the fact that they should be treated as they were being treated. The Hindus were saying, well, if that is the wish of Ram, we're paying for the sins that we did in the last life and so on. The Muslims were saying, Allah knows best. And you know what I had to do to mobilize them? When I would call these meetings to talk to them, I would refer to the Quran and the struggles of Muhammad, which he had. They were fighting. I would talk about the Hindus. The Mahabharata is about war and struggle and so on. And I'd talk to the Christian and remind them of a hymn that said, onward Christian soldiers marching us to war. The object was to speak to them. And there were three separate groups who had kept divided. And you united them, I was able to unite them by indicating to each group that their religion was to fight for their rights. They must fight for it.
So in a sense, you had to instill bravery in the world.
And we succeeded in developing a tremendous army.
Yes.
Can you imagine getting workers to strike 1 week and work 1 week and strike 1 week and work 1 week? They had to have enormous discipline to do that.
How did you do that? Because I mean, I'm just thinking in today's world, I mean, where so many of the workers seem so passive, right? The government is just throwing out 5,000 people in Petrotrin and people are just taking it.
Well, I tell you, the workers were prepared to fight. And we had mobilized them to the point where they were willing to fight. I can't recall whether that was before Bloody Tuesday. But what Bloody Tuesday did to us is that Bloody Tuesday made us realize that all the struggles of the working class that we had achieved could be wiped out with the stroke of a political pen.
So let's just recap. What was Bloody Tuesday?
Bloody Tuesday was, we had organized this march, and we were going to start from the Oilfield Workers Trade Union headquarters, which is in Circular Road.
And you called it a religious march because political demonstrations were
peace, bread, and justice. Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And but in that march, the police was run by a guy called Randolph Burrows.
Right.
And there we
Who
were.
also had a formidable reputation as a...
of violence.
That's right.
So there we were at the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, ready to come out, start our march, when we got word that there were police, because we had decided that when we come out of Circular Road, we would turn left, we'd go up to Monrepo, take the highway, and go up to Port of Spain. We heard that there were some bushes there, that there were snipers there. We got that message that there were snipers waiting for us. So we decided we'd change our strategy immediately. So we decided, Weeks, myself, those of us who were struggling, we decided that when we come out of Circular Road, instead of turning left, we would turn right.
Okay.
And we would go down Coffee Street instead. By this time, there are helicopters flying overboard, there are police outside the Union building. And
did Eric Williams issue direct threats to you all? Or no?
Not directly.
It was more Burrows who issued these kind of things? Or?
Not direct. Afterwards, he had said that we are lucky because in another country, the first 100 would have been shot.
Yes, I remember Williams said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
He didn't issue threats directly before the march. We turned down into Coffee Street. And in this airplane upstairs was a deputy commissioner of police. I can't remember his name. Can't remember his name at the time. So he directed, they found out we changed our minds. We were going in another direction. And by the time we had reached the Susamacha Church on Coffee Street, there was a police barrier waiting for us. And they told us that, well, we can't go forward and so on. So there is this deadlock. They are standing there. We are standing there. We are not moving and nobody's moving and so on. We tried to go forward. They threw tear gas at us. And as they threw tear gas at us, we kicked back the tear gas at them.
Right.
And the wind started blowing there. And they now scattered.
The police scattered.
Yeah. Some of them ran into the crowd and started beating up the people and so on and so forth. And they ran Coffee Street. A lot of people were injured. Everything was chaos after that.
Were you injured?
I was on the front line.
Yeah.
With Weeks and the others.
Did you get a bad? I've seen pictures of bloody skulls. Did you get?
I stumbled on with the tear gas. I stumbled onto the pavement, and in stumbling onto the pavement, my glasses must have fallen, and I went down Coffee Street, turned up Carib Street, and went into the compound of the Presbyterian school, the grad school, and the church that was there. Right? I don't know what is going on. I was screaming and all sorts of things. And it is from there we had made a plan that if the government tried to stop us and so on, whoever escaped would continue the march until Chaguanas, because we had decided to march until Chaguanas, overnight at Chaguanas, and go on to Port of Spain. So we had people waiting for us in Chaguanas and so on. And I remember that I stumbled on there, got into the compound, people gathering around and so on. And cut a long story short, I said I must get back to the Union headquarters. How to get back to the Union headquarters? Because I am one that escaped. I don't know how many others did. Oh, John Humphrey did. John Humphrey did, and he started walking. And he started walking up Parapia Road, and they meet him, and they beat him up badly. They injured his intestines, actually.
Wow, wow. And that's an important thing too, because John Humphrey was a white Trinidadian from an old prestigious family, and he had joined the struggle.
He had joined the struggle.
He had joined the struggle very much, and paid a physical price and all sorts.
Oh, tremendous price he paid.
Yes. I mean, he was a very good friend of yours, and
always.
Decades.
So what I told the fellows there, I said, listen, I have to reach Oilfield Workers Trade Union headquarters to regroup. They put me in a car to lie down on the floor of where the back seat is. And 3 fellows came and sat down on the seat and put their feet on me. And they drove the car out of the Grand School compound, up Carib Street. When we reached where the old power station was, there's a group of policemen, but I am lying down on the floor of the car, and the guys have their feet on top of me, so you can't see me at all. So we drove up to the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. And from there, I decided that I must reach Chagonas, because that was the plan. And all kind of machinations and so on. We waited until the rain came. And during a big shower, the police, though, sheltering, because they don't want to get wet. I ran out into the rain, into a car, and the car took off.
Right.
And the car took off. The fellas are brilliant. When the car reached Taruba, changed the car. Car changed. And I heading up to Chagonas.
Sounds like a movie.
Well, of course, I'm early. Yeah. The meeting, the meeting in Chagonas is supposed to be about 4 o'clock or something like that. So these friends of mine who took me up there, just have to hide me until 4 o'clock. So they have me in this car, and they took me to a house behind the market. It was Eleanor Street or something. They took me to a house, and they tell the lady, they said, we have Mr. Panday in this car, and we want to hide him. And she says, oh God, not here, not here. My husband is a policeman. Husband was a policeman. And like when I drove around and so on, and we ended up at another house. And they went to the other house, and there was an old woman. I don't think she was a sugar worker or what, that old woman in a house by herself. And they told her that have to hide until 4 o'clock. She said, bring him in. And I went in there.
Right.
I went in the house, and she's hiding me. She's giving me food and so on and so forth. But the radio, she had a radio, and the radio is blasting. They're looking for Rafiq Shan Panday. 2 of them have escaped. I think they arrested George Weeks, they arrested Kelchel, they arrested a whole lot of them and so on. Joe Young, Rafiq Shah had escaped. So, news on the...
eventually arrested?
But listen to what happened. The radio is broadcasting that the police are looking for Panday and Shah to arrest them. Now, I in this poor lady house, no, she have her radio. They know they're going to arrest me and so on. She treated me so well. And when 4 o'clock reached, I tell her, well, I say, I gotta go. Yeah, I lost you.
Oh, sorry. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Wait. I can hear you now. I can see you now.
Okay,
right.
Good.
Okay.
So yeah, so the lady said that
now
have to go.
The time has come. I'm ready to go. And I tell her, I said, thank you very much, and so, but I have to leave. And I was a rather slim fellow at the time. She held my hand and she said, oh God, this little weak hand, if they hit you one lash on the sun, they're going to break down. And so on. Started crying. Poor thing. But I left her. No glasses. And as I walked out, I'm walking down, that must be Shagona's main road. I'm walking down towards the State Park.
Right.
No glasses, hair ruffled and so on. I noticed a policeman passed me. He did a double take and gone. He
doesn't want to.
I reached State Park. And as I reached State Park, I started mobilizing the people and I talking to them. They had cooked for us food because they know a lot of us were going to come up and we're going to sleep there. And they had cooked. The police went and threw tear gas in the pot. You know, they cook in these very big pots and
yes.
Police threw tear gas in the food.
Wow.
That's how bad they were. So anyway,
but you had that one policeman who turned away because he was sympathetic, he was afraid.
I don't know him. He probably didn't recognize me.
Okay,
He said nonsense. He wouldn't be walking down the road like that.
Okay.
Whatever it was. So I started holding a meeting, started talking to the workers and so on and telling them what had happened and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, series of cars with blue lights and this and noise swooped down upon us and began beating the people. And I use language which I wouldn't like to use on the air. Okay. But I told them, I said, what the hell are you beating them for? It's me who want, if it's me who won't take me, that's all right. But leave them alone and so on and so on. Well, I said, if you won't take me, and they did.
Right.
And they took me down to the police station, arrested me, took me down to the Shagona's police station.
How long were you in jail for?
Well, at the Shagona's police station, a curious thing happened. As they took me in and they were going to put me into the cell, in the cell, there were several prisoners in the cell. I don't know if they were going to put me in one of those prisoners, in one of those cells, but the prisoners began shouting, "Power, power, power," because that was the slogan, and then the Black Power. So they were afraid to put me in the cell. So they put me on a chair to sit down just outside the cell.
So the criminals were very sympathetic to you.
Very sympathetic. I mean, we were all criminals together after all.
Wait. No. So the people in the cells, they were arrested because of the march, or that was just other.
No, I think they were the prisoners waiting to go to court.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So just right.
Yeah.
Good.
But shouting "power, power, power" was a slogan that
energized people.
Energize you.
Yes.
Yeah, energize you. So they put me in a chair just outside the cell, and there was one very, very kind policeman, and he went and he bought a roti for me, a roti and potato or something, and I ate that. About 7 o'clock, an inspector of police, fair skin, I knew his name, I don't remember it so long, and he come and he says, we have to go. I say, where? I have to take you to San Fernando. I said, okay. So he put me in this car, we are driving down to San Fernando, we reached the San Fernando police station, and as they opened the door, the cell door, to put me in, I hear a chorus from inside the cell saying, "Oh God, not another one." Because there are about 25 of them inside. And they put us in a cell. I don't know how many of us they had in them. 10 by 10 cell or something like that. Crammed up. And what they had a piece of board on an elevated, like a bed.
Yeah.
And there was one guy whom they had arrested. Oh, in that jail was John Humphrey, Weeks, the whole lot of them that they had arrested and put them there.
The leaders of the march.
Right, so I joined them. There was one guy, I think he was a photographer. The police had hit him on the head and fractured his skull. And they put him to lie down on this plank of wood, and he was vomiting in the cell. I remember they said it's hot. I took off my shirt, and as I leaned against the wall, there's a little thing called German cockroach. You know what's a German cockroach? A German cockroach is a little one.
Right.
And the cell, of course, had cracks in it. So the German cockroach live in the thing. And as I lean on the wall, man, the German cockroach.
All up your back.
Dust it off and so on. And Humphrey is the most amazing man. In that cell, Humphrey's talking political philosophy and talking about plans and which we did all night. The following morning, they took us to the police station or charged us with leading an illegal march. And eventually we lost the case. And we appealed. We lost the appeal. And the funniest thing is, having lost the appeal...
You were out on bail during this time, were you? Or?
We were out on bail.
Right.
We were out on bail. So at the appeal court, here's the matter. That's in the San Fernando Magistrate Court, upstairs there. And the case is over. We have lost. Now, of course, we have some people who had come in there and so on, policemen. So the judge vacates the court. His case is over. He's gone. And we stood up there. And we are doing nothing. We are saying nothing and doing nothing.
Yes.
And we're just standing there. The court, judges have gone. So policeman says, shall I take you all down to pay the fine? Oh, incidentally, I was charged $600 or 6 months in jail. George Hicks, I think, was charged $1,200 or 12 months in jail, and varied sentences like all of that. And we said, no. So they asked us, policemen, shall we take you down to go and pay the fine? We said, no, we're not paying any fine. We're not paying any fine. I said, well, what? We go to jail. And we have 6 months or $600. No, we're not paying it. We take in the 6 months, we go to jail. And they load us up in this van again, and there we are taking us up. But I had maybe a very morbid sense of humor. In this van, it's closed. Right? There are little cells in the van that they put you in. And there we are. And we are going up to Port of Spain. And I said, fellas, we reach Saguanas. And I said, Bas, don't talk nonsense, man. What stupid did you talk there? Nobody could see outside. How you could say we reach Saguanas? I said, oh, they don't smell curry. Well, curry brand factories in Saguanas. That smell is coming from curry, and we are by Chief Brand Curry Factory, and therefore we in Saguanas. As I said, I had a morbid sense of humor to make a joke out of everything. You took it.
And I suppose that is the way you deal with a lot of the challenges that would make others scared, that would make others run away, that would make others migrate to another country, that would make them stop struggle.
I will make a joke out of it.
Yes.
I let them make it. So that is how that ended up. But that march made us realize that the trade union must have political power. Because if the trade unions do not have political power, and the political power belongs to some other group, whatever advances the trade union makes for the workers can be wiped out with the stroke of a pen. Eric Williams just proved it. Right? And that is what spurred us on to form the United Labour Front.
A political party now. Which again...
And we formed...
It goes back to the Workers' and Farmers' Party because it's the same type of thing.
United Labour Front.
Right.
So we were in that zone.
Because the workers, the farmers, the sugar farmers,
exactly.
And the workers, oil workers.
We were in that zone where we were regarded as leftists.
Yeah. How many people from the Workers' and Farmers' Party were actually in the ULF? Was it a lot? I know, like Trevor Sudama. Yeah. So it's kind of like a revival of the Workers' and Farmers' Party.
As a matter of fact, we became so strong that we formed the party in 75 or somewhere around there.
Yes, 75.
In 76, we displaced the opposition, the DLP opposition.
Yes.
So we had a lot of support. We had tremendous support. And you know what is strange? And people don't realize that. It is said that Indians, Indo-Trinidadians, call them whatever you will always vote for race and religion and that sort of thing. In 1975, we defeated Simbunath Kapildew. I defeated him
who was a leader? He was the leader of the Mahasabha at the time, was he?
Yes, we defeated Sat Maraj, who was...
Oh, he was the leader of
the Mahasabha. And all these religious guys who had once, as Sat recently said, had the Indian vote. You know,
yes.
Sat has released them, I understand. Who had what is called the Indian vote. The Indians did not vote race. They did not vote religion. They voted for the economic welfare.
Yes.
That's what they voted for. We were struggling to improve their lives, their economic lives, their well-being, their physical well-being. And they didn't fall for the racial and religious thing at all. And I'm convinced that if there's a change in the political system in Trinidad and Tobago, people will vote for their economic and social interests and not the racial cleavages, not on the basis of racial. I'm not convinced of that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that whole part of your struggle is, I mean, this has animated you, and ever since you came from 65, you kept fighting it. You paid a personal price and everything. Now, I think now is probably a good time to take a pause. We've been at this for a few hours. Unless you want to go further, you tell me.
Oh, I think we had enough for today.
Yes, I think so. Although we've only reached the midpoint. You have so much more.
You intend to continue it?
I would love to continue this at some point.
It's okay.
But we don't have to continue it right now. We can continue it at a later time if you want.
That will be fine. Because you must recognize I'm not as young as you are, you know.
Right. Well, I will let you go at this point, and we
that's very kind of you. That's very kind.
Yes, because I can keep you here for another 6 hours if I want. This is fascinating stuff because then when we get to the bringing together of all the other forces in the NAR, the breakup of that, how you became prime minister, all all those struggles that happened there. This is very important because you're dealing with universal problems of racial division, of national unity, of socialism versus capitalism. We didn't even talk about how the Cold War affected all of your struggles and everything, because Eric Williams found himself having to ally with the United States and fighting the trade union movement and your struggles because of the Cold War background. And so we got involved in that in our own struggles here. But I want to thank you for this so far, and I hope we can continue very soon.
As soon as you are ready and I have the strength.
Okay.
You will.
Thank you.
My pleasure.